Story 1. Cleaning. I have seen people say that being a janitor is easy, but they overlook all the unpleasant things janitors see and need to clean. I have great respect for them. Story 2. Any kind of customer service or hospitality work. I could probably have just about dealt with the 14 to 18-hour shifts with no breaks or social life if it were not for the actual customers. It makes you lose faith in humanity, not just the blatant stupidity either. I have worked in cafes, restaurants, bars, and more all over, and people can be absolutely rude in every country. On a daily basis, people belittle you, shout at you, take their anger out on you, or want to argue just for the sake of it. Even if you give them a solution to what they are upset about, you are already their emotional punching bag, so who cares? Most people are fine, but the ones who are not, I have had to keep my cool too many times to count. Story 3. Oh, you think that plot hole was moronic? Everyone saw that twist coming a mile away? That line was cringe? The writers of the show are all dumb hacks? Well, yeah, sure. But try sitting down and actually writing a story yourself. It is hard. I appreciate writing 100 times more after trying to write something myself. Story 4. The person who holds the sign during road construction is standing in the middle of the road under the hot sun all day, at risk of getting hit. I have never done it, but I am not criticizing anyone who has. Story 5. Serving at a restaurant, for sure. The amount of multitasking, prioritizing, and people skills required for this job is impressive. Story 6. Hospice nurse. Hands down, one of the most mentally challenging jobs. After seeing them in action with my father during his last weeks, I have gained a whole new level of respect for them. Story 7. Picking strawberries. I did it for fun at a U-pick farm. Seems easy and innocuous. Bright red, big berries. But no, you aren't supposed to leave the little ones. The farmer needs the row to be picked clean so they can move people to the unpicked rows. You can't sit, you have to bend at the waist. The sun gets intense. I only made it through half a flat before I quit. I have huge respect for strawberry pickers now. Huge. I've also picked apples, peaches, blueberries, and cherries at U-pick farms, but strawberries are next level. Story 8. Truckers. I have heard a lot of people say, but it is just driving. I would love to sit and get paid. Story 9. For me, fixing anything mechanical like cars or electronics is always like this. I think I have 2 hours to spare and can fix it in one. For hours later, because of a stripped or inaccessible bolt, I start to wonder why I am doing this. Story 10. Delivering mail. You would be amazed at how many people do not have their mailboxes labeled properly. Story 11. Referee. Had to fill in as a recreational league soccer referee, and suddenly it was all I could do to remember which side the ball went off of. I can't imagine doing that for something faster or more important. Story 12. Therapist. Especially if you work in managed healthcare facilities or with severe mental illness. Burnout is real. You can read thousands of books on stoicism and emotional intelligence, but you are kidding yourself if you think that load is not heavy. Story 13. Any job that would fall under essential worker is easily underestimated. You work 50 to 60 hours a week on minimum wage while, depending on the job, getting berated, physically broken down, mentally exhausted, and barely scraping by while doing whatever is needed, usually going above and beyond for no extra money. Story 14. Nursing. I married a night shift emergency room Bachelor of Science in nursing who is in her Doctor of Nursing practice program. Bedside care is difficult. The number of times she has been physically assaulted, sexually assaulted, spat on, and mistreated by hospital administration is unacceptable. We have no idea what our nurses and healthcare staff go through. Story 15. Fast food restaurants are often the subject of jokes about low intelligence, low pay, and unskilled labor. If members of Congress worked even 1 week in the fast food industry, the minimum wage would be raised immediately. Story 16. I can't believe there are not more people talking about concrete, especially stamped and colored concrete. If everyone knew, they would have so much respect for it. I work a highly physical job that requires me to be in shape. I also work out 5 to 6 days a week. I was an athlete my entire life at a high level and helped a family friend's concrete business. Concrete workers have my respect big time. Story 17, acting. I used to work in film on the crew side, and the difficulties the cast went through were intense. The stress level would overwhelm me. The exhaustion, complete vulnerability, exposure to public attention, and potential for ridicule were significant. Especially when the audience dislikes your character or a decision about that character made by the producers, but for some reason directs it at you, for example, Bella Ramsey from The Last of Us. Not to mention the many ways they can get hurt, the time spent between shows wondering if anyone will cast them again, and the difficult process of auditioning, which is made even worse nowadays with Zoom-only casting. It is truly challenging. The outside world often thinks it is a fantasy land. It is not. Story 18, Costco checkout. They are very efficient and usually 10 times as pleasant as my local supermarket cashier. Story 19, service industry. All the people who mock fast food workers and restaurant workers for wanting to make a living wage have never worked at one of these places in their life. Story 20. In general, blue-collar workers tend to underestimate office workers, and vice versa. Bricklayers, for example, often say that office workers are delicate and that they do nothing all day except sit. I have seen and heard them say this. Office workers, for their part, often say that blue-collar workers are ignorant and lazy. I once saw an industrial engineering intern fail to print a portable document format file, while the blue-collar worker, who had been with the company for years, was able to. Story 21. Firefighters are respected by most, but some critics said all they did was sleep or play basketball and pool. Story 22. I have written software for myself. How hard could it be to be a software engineer? Exponentially harder. Story 23. At every workplace with many different jobs under one roof, everyone agrees on this. Everyone else's job is so easy, and no one understands how difficult my job is. Story 24. I have always thought that digging a grave would take me at least 2 days. In Western films, they do it in just 1 hour. Story 25. Retail. Usually, the worst customers find a way to mention that they once worked in retail and know the customer is always right. Not reacting all day, every day, drains a person in a different way than physical work does. Story 26. Any job dealing directly with the public is challenging. Do you think it is easy working a drive-through window at 12:30 a.m.? Go ahead and try it. Story 27. Despite white-collar workers being paid significantly more than most blue-collar workers, I would argue many blue-collar jobs are more difficult. Story 28. Mover. I did it first about 10 years ago. Later, I did short haul, so it was load a day, drive a day, unload, then drive back. We'd get these big, jacked bodybuilder types. They were not very helpful. Wrapping and tying up the furniture so it fits and doesn't break. Story 29. Primary teacher. I have taught secondary physics, mathematics, and information systems at undergraduate and postgraduate levels, both domestically and internationally. However, the most challenging job I ever had was working a couple of hours a week as a mathematics specialist in grades 2 to 3 and 5 to 6. It was enjoyable but mentally and emotionally exhausting. Story 30. I helped my father insulate our cottage. I itched for a week, and my sacroiliac joint popped out because of how I had to contort and bend in many ways to get insulation into nooks and crannies. Story 31. Hear me out. Doctors face significant stress due to their lifestyle. A college for a communications major is very different from college for someone who wants to be a doctor. I remember many times gazing out the window of the building I was studying in while people outside were having fun. It felt like having a toothache. College for me was a lot of work and not much fun. Some of my friends had a blast at college. My experience was different. Getting into medical school is competitive. There are 3,000 applicants for 200 seats. Lots of stress. Study, study, study. Test, test, test. Study, study, study. See debt. Most medical students accumulate significant debt. School loans can be $300,000 or higher with high interest rates, meaning you are paying almost like a mortgage every month. But the principal doesn't decrease much unless you pay well above the required amount. Training is very difficult. As the newest in the hierarchy, you do the most menial tasks but carry a lot of responsibility while trying to study intensely. The pace and volume of information you need to learn is relentless. Supervising physicians may or may not be supportive. You never know. It's also scary. Everyone is terrified of making a mistake. You often lie awake at night questioning whether you made the right decision. There is little break during these years. No vacation time, and even if you get time off, you are usually too broke to do much. You often can't attend weddings, funerals, family gatherings, or holidays. You are completely at the mercy of your schedule, and days off are not guaranteed during medical school. Residency offers a bit more freedom, but I trained right before the 80-hour workweek rule was implemented and got basically one weekend off a month, which I spent sleeping for about 48 hours. Once you finish training and start to settle in, the work is still demanding. Many days exceed your capacity, but the work must be done. Basic needs like food, bathroom breaks, water, and sleep become secondary when a patient arrives at 2 a.m. with a serious condition, such as an ischemic, possibly perforated bowel. That takes precedence over your needs. People say, "You make a lot of money," but the money isn't worth much if you don't have a meaningful life to enjoy it. If your first few days off are just spent recovering and handling daily maintenance, it can wear you down. You still experience many kinds of abuse. Just before I started writing this, a patient waking up from a methamphetamine binge was screaming at nurses and trying to leave against medical advice. I had to intervene to manage the situation because he is septic with a large abscess. I understand he probably needs his fix, but I don't want him to have a bad outcome. I have to do a lot of ego management and persuasion to keep him in. He will likely relapse again tonight and make my life difficult. On top of that, many people online act like they know more than I do. They say things like, "Why haven't you checked his immunoglobulin G levels or started him on antifungal drugs? This pneumonia must be fungal. I had valley fever years ago, and it was just like this." The overlap between internet comments and doctors includes stories like, "Doctor cuts off wrong leg," "Doctor behaving inappropriately under anesthesia," and "Doctor commits welfare fraud." There are terrible people in every field, but the internet seems full of people who really dislike us, sometimes with reason. Despite all this, I love my job and wouldn't want to do anything else. But some days it's tough. We have been understaffed for a while, with higher patient volume and acuity than usual. Right now, I feel a bit worn out around the edges. Story 32. Farming operating machinery is easy. However, trying to make a living from it can bring you to your knees. Story 33. Stay-at-home parent. I was fortunate enough to get 6 months off with our child, and going to work was much easier. I am a surgeon with a demanding call schedule and long hours. Story 34. Brain surgery is a job for experts who can handle complex science. Turns out to be a little harder than I thought. Story 35. Chief Executive Officer at a small to medium business. 99% of us are not Elon Musk. Many people have sacrificed salary, bonuses, and equity to ensure employees are compensated fairly and the company survives another day. You can never tell anyone you did that, which is why there are anonymous confessions on Reddit. Story 36. Acting. Most people dismiss it as not real work and assume anyone could do it if given the chance. However, speaking in public is one of the most common human phobias. If you have ever had to sit through a presentation or filming of someone who is not good at it, it is excruciating. Story 37. Moving dirt with a shovel or with a machine always seems to take much longer than expected. Story 38. Drywall. I am a YouTube home repair expert. Skilled drywall specialists make it look so easy. I applaud them. Story 39. Any type of leader or trainer requires immense patience. Both need the ability to read people and situations and adapt quickly and accordingly. I have been and currently am both. It takes a certain personality type to do these jobs well. To be a trainer, you must be willing to teach, learn, and watch for and adapt to the challenges inherent in what you are training people to do. To be a leader of anything, you must be able to assess your situation and adapt quickly and accordingly. Additionally, you need to be even-tempered in both roles. As a leader, you must adapt your labor for maximum efficiency and manage the consequences of any personal issues that arise. Story 40. Surprisingly, Being a pilot is challenging. People say things like, the autopilot does all the work. You do not do anything. An alarming number of people believe they could land a plane if the pilots were incapacitated. Spoiler alert, they could not. Story 41. Shipping freight is important. We all want our goods delivered in a timely manner. We do not care how they get to us. For those of us who ship and send items out, it can be pretty tricky at times. Story 42. Pulling up an old garden that had black tarp paper down years prior. All the roots and vegetation have grown through it. Ripping it up with grass grown over it is not easy. Story 43. Placing and finishing concrete is challenging. You often see the workers sitting on buckets waiting, but it is very difficult to complete the task, especially in hot weather. Story 44. All jobs look easy from the outside. When you encounter the first difficulty, you realize you are in for a challenging experience. Story 45. McDonald's is often described as an easy job, but it becomes extremely stressful and high pressure when busy. The work is exhausting. Story 46. Food service requires maintaining proper hygiene, thorough cleaning, and accurate cooking times, which can be challenging for most people. Story 47. Remodeling. Everyone watches home and garden television or TikTok before and after videos and thinks they can do it fast, cheap, and easy. It always costs more than you think, encounters many snags, and takes 3 times as long. Story 48. Definitely bartending or waiting tables. People always have a lot to say when service is slow and think they could do a better job. Story 49. Retail. Everyone assumes you barely do any work and just sit around waiting for something to do. The reality is you are always doing something the entire shift and are exhausted by the end of it. Standing for 8 hours straight on concrete is difficult regardless of what you are doing. Do not even get me started on how socially drained you will feel at the end of the week after hearing the same 5 jokes and saying the same 5 lines to customers. Story 50. Roofing. I kid. Haha, it sucks, and I think everyone knows that. I worked for 6 months at 18 years old. Never again. Story 51. I think being a waiter in a high-end restaurant can be extremely stressful because someone's reputation is on the line, and it is easy to make a mistake by forgetting something. Additionally, the clientele does not tolerate any errors. However, you do get paid. Story 52. Many people say flipping burgers at McDonald's should pay less than minimum wage. Those people need to try it for a shift. Story 53. Letter carrier. In the office with supervisors or outside dealing with the weather, difficult customers, and dogs that want to attack you. Did I mention the weather? Story 54. Being a manager in a high-stress situation, the trade-offs felt much easier to make when I was a junior employee. As I have moved higher in my company, I am seeing how difficult the trade-offs can be. Story 55. Setting up an above-ground pool and maintaining it requires several steps. You need to level your lawn, purchase the correct filter, buy sand for the filter, and spend hundreds of dollars on pool chemicals each season. You also need to replace those chemicals periodically to prevent the pool water from turning green. This process can be very challenging and time-consuming. Story 56. Helping out on a farm for hay season is something that I never want to experience again. You sit in the wagon pulled by the tractor, and the harvest compactor starts sending bales your way. You need to stack them as fast as you can, like a huge game of Tetris. Each bale weighs around 40 to 60 pounds, and the wagon is usually full after 300 of them. Then the tractor drives the wagon and parks it in front of the barn. You go up to the barn attic, where it is usually around 40 to 60 degrees Celsius. The escalator starts sending the bales your way, and you stack them again, this time in the attic. A nightmare. Story 57. Doing some home repair. I once tried to remove old wallpaper and thought it was a weekend job. It took 2 full weeks to remove all the 1950s glue. Story 58. I mentor new graduates, and the number of people who freak out over blood, wounds, or general unpleasant bodily substances surprises me. Nursing can be hard, long work, and is now even more dangerous due to random patient assaults. It is not for the faint of heart. Story 59. Production work. No one thinks about the worker on the production line who has to manually insert 300 handles onto buckets while the machine is down, or how every single gasket has to be manually installed into the lids. Story 60. Several retired engineers from top companies with prestigious titles have taught at our university as adjunct professors. Most are either let go or leave after a semester. Personally, I found that most severely lacked the fundamentals. However, they were generally very confident individuals with great social skills. Story 61. Opposite. Roofing. Everyone says it is hard. You break a sweat sometimes, sure. A $7,000 day of cleaning drains for 4 hours is some of the easiest money I will ever make. I will take a 12-hour day of torching cap over my previous job of making pizzas, even if it was the same wage. Story 62. Cart pushing. People often disregard cart pushers as menial labor, but I can tell by looking at them that they could not do it themselves. Story 63. Apparently fixing their heating, ventilation, and air conditioning system. Everyone has Google and a Phillips screwdriver until it is time to actually do the work. Story 64. Teaching is by far the #1 career path that people I went to school with gave up on. It is hard, demanding, and the pay is usually low. Yes, I call my former teacher friends dropouts. Story 65. Being a line cook involves brutal conditions, a heavy workload, and a fast pace. People who have never worked as a line cook or at least worked in a restaurant do not understand how hard it is to complete a brunch shift on the egg station. Story 66. Managing. People tend to say managers do nothing and are lazy or unintelligent. To be honest, many of them are opportunists, but all top-level managers I have ever met are hardworking and intelligent individuals. I have never seen a manager placed in an easy position. It is remarkable how diplomatic and proactive you need to be to improve the situation you manage even slightly. The only technical problems that reach you have been failing for a long time before getting to you, and the pressure from the chief executive officer and chief information officer levels haunts you in your dreams. Sometimes I miss the times working in retail just stocking shelves. Clock in, do manual labor, clock out, and be free. Story 67. Teaching. I rest my case. If you think you can do my job, consider this a meat department. Take a number and wait to be served. Story 68. Serving people food. People think servers are just human forklifts that pick up the plate and put down the plate. Story 69. Being a financial analyst. Have fun skimming through thousands of Excel spreadsheets to find faults in cash flows due to accounting errors while dealing with the team in India over their excuses for errors in trade processing and clients who never respond within a 24-hour period because of various reasons. Also, the pay is average and the cubicle life is draining. The mental anguish one feels is hard to describe. If you can tolerate mind-numbing and boring cash flow analysis, endless Outlook emails, 90% of which are irrelevant, and continuous Microsoft Teams meetings about nothing, then this is the job for you. It is clear I dislike my job, but the steady and secure salary and benefits help. Real money comes once you earn your chartered financial analyst certification. Story 70. Deli counter meat counter. When they were trying to put an epidural in while I was having my son, it took 5 attempts. The anesthetist said, "What do you do? Because your back is an overworked mess." I told him I work at the service deli, and he said, "Ah, yeah, that makes sense." Story 71. I was a porter at a hotel. My job was to take people's luggage to their room after they exited the tour bus. The anger from people when they answered their door was intense. I was just a teenager and tried to explain I had nothing to do with the bus trip or the room. Story 72. Teaching. Everyone thinks they are an expert because they went to school. Of 800 students in my course, over half dropped out after the first practical training. Not only is the job hard, but many people think teachers deserve to be treated poorly or enjoy being told it is just babysitting. Story 73. Being a residential and commercial painter, I have been at it for 10 years now. We have expanded and do a lot of remodels. We do everything, and I have grown with this company. I cannot tell you how many times people have said painting is easy. It is not. You do not just grab a brush and throw a straight line. It takes years to master and become efficient. Spraying is not easy either. Rolling is easier, but if you do not know your paints and how they dry, you could easily have your whole house looking bad. Being able to walk a job, see all the imperfections, know the steps to take, assign workers by job and efficiency, and be ready for unexpected challenges is a whole career in itself. It is not easy, and I have met many who do not want to take leadership in it because of how picky clients can be. They want their dream laid out in front of them and will nitpick it. It is a skill to get it right the first time. Story 74. Being a billionaire. Every day I get up, I have nothing scheduled, so I have to come up with something to do all day. It is exhausting. Story 75. Supervising and managing. Everyone needs something from you all day long. It does not stop. Then someone is mad at you because you forgot to order their new broom. Story 76. Direct care staff must be a top priority, especially for mental health consumers and at-risk youth. These roles require similar basic training and tasks but are very demanding both mentally and physically. They demand different approaches for each individual served. It is a job that can be both loved and hated at the same time. Serving the community in this way is one of the most challenging and rewarding jobs. Story 77. Everyone thinks taking an order and delivering it just happens. Everyone dislikes working in hospitality. Is this what you mean? Story 78. Anything that is commission only. My first job out of college was commission-only car sales. I graduated in 2008 at the height of the recession. There is nothing more stressful than working 80 hours a week not knowing if you will get paid while competing with half a dozen other car salesmen who are in the same situation as you. Story 79. Print production. I never knew it was so complicated working with commercial printers like the large factory machines. Story 80. Working at a dog daycare is one of the most draining, frustrating, and physically demanding jobs I have ever had. Story 81. Being a customer service representative requires serious patience, emotional control, problem-solving, and communication skills. You deal with angry, confused, or stressed people all day and are still expected to be calm, helpful, and fast. It is much harder than it looks. Story 82. This is a little tongue-in-cheek but a real-world story. Office work. I've worked in an office my entire life from the early 1990s. A friend of mine, who worked in his father's small factory and now owns it, took the mickey out of me from the early until the late 1990s. The usual. Feet permanently up, drinking coffee all day, never actually doing any real work. In the late 1990s, his father's factory hit some hard times and he was let go for a few months. Somehow, he managed to get an office job for a delivery company called Parcel Force. He thought he was going to put his feet up and rake in some easy cash. I will never forget him asking me how to deal with the female employees. He genuinely thought he was going to be dragged into a storeroom on a regular basis for some romantic fun. He lasted 4 weeks before he handed in his notice. He was mentally exhausted and couldn't believe that there was barely a minute to breathe in the constantly busy atmosphere. The women who worked there actually worked for a living. From that day, he has never made fun of me once. Story 83. Taking care of a child. Oh, what is that? You mean your incomplete theories on how to discipline a child faltered in a real-life situation. Story 84. Being a content creator. People think it is just taking cute pictures and posting a few videos until they spend 6 hours editing a 30-second reel, burn out from posting daily, try to fight the algorithm, deal with creepy direct messages, and still have to look flawless the next day. It is a mix of marketing, branding, psychology, production, and acting on repeat. And no, it is not just being attractive online. It is being a whole brand. Story 85. Cooking in a small bistro or restaurant. Have you ever tried to get 4 or 6, or even 2, different dishes ready at the same time in about 30 minutes or less? And then some. In bigger restaurants, there are stations. This means a team of cooks prepares different items such as vegetables, meat, fish, salad, and sauces, depending on the size of the restaurant. These items are arranged and finished, usually by the chef. This process is demanding in terms of coordination, but it is nothing compared to doing it all by yourself or with only one helper. Story 86. Parenting is not just about love. It requires patience, multitasking, and managing chaos. It commands next-level respect once you experience it. Story 87. Scientific research in any subject is not just about running experiments and interpreting results, but also involves defending the hypothesis, publishing findings, writing, and raising funds to conduct the experiments. Story 88. Garbage disposal workers. People think it is easy to lift and just place items in the back of the truck. The problem is similar to construction work, where lifting heavy objects constantly throughout the day leads to health issues over time. Additionally, workers have to deal with unpleasant waste. People should take more care when disposing of their trash. Story 89. All jobs have their difficulties. No job is easy. You always have to deal with people, be it your superiors, your boss, a customer, or a client. People are difficult and prone to causing problems. People are also greedy and egotistical. Story 90. Working in a restaurant kitchen is not only non-stop, but can also be stressful and dangerous. For example, my coworker had burns on her arms due to an accident with a large pan full of hot oil. Story 91. People generally have a terrible idea of how long it takes to renovate. New kitchen? Oh, we will fix that on the weekend. A week later, many people have at best a temporary hot plate for their noodles setup. It is not for nothing that renovations tend to be a stress tester for relationships. Story 92. Park ranger. Everyone I meet tells me how it must be such a relaxing and easy job. You get to be outdoors all day and just walk or drive around the park. They never think about the following: dealing with many visitors who want to do dangerous things that can get them hurt or killed, then argue with you for telling them to stop. Search and rescue missions that end with finding the missing person deceased. This happens more often than one would think. Having to physically pick up a mortally wounded animal, place it in your truck, and drive it to the local animal hospital for euthanasia. This year I have already had a vulture, a few bunnies, a fawn, and a porcupine. It becomes depressing after a while. Providing CPR to a grandfather who suffered cardiac arrest at his campsite in front of his whole family. While most days are good, the bad days can definitely be hard. Story 93. Education. People think that just because they are adults who went through school, they can teach children without any background or training in educational theory or child development. I have encountered many people who seem confused by the concept of having a degree in education, as if it never occurred to them that it is an academic field you can specialize in. Story 94. Almost every job. I have worked jobs ranging from landscaping and digging holes for money to software engineering. Blue-collar workers tend to think white-collar workers are lazy because they do not need to physically exhaust themselves, but fail to realize that knowledge work requires a lot of effort. I try to describe it as doing a math test all day. It is not physically difficult, but you are exhausted at the end of the day. On the other hand, many white-collar workers have never worked a blue-collar job, or it has been so long since they have that they romanticize it, so they have the same issue. Many, if not most, white-collar workers think that blue-collar workers are just too lazy or stupid to do anything with their lives, while ignoring the fact that they have to call one of these blue-collar workers when anything breaks because they never developed the skills to fix anything on their own. Everyone thinks everyone else has it easy. Maybe I see this because I am autistic, or because I grew up poor and skilled myself into a blue-collar job later in life, but it has been painfully obvious to me for years. The real answer is that everyone needs to stop trying to compare workers to workers. We all provide some benefit to our nation. The real freeloaders are the chief executive officers and billionaires. Story 95. Realtors often get a bad reputation, but they do more than you think. It is not just about emailing listings and unlocking doors. You often have to deliver bad news to buyers. Some of them break down in tears or curse you out. Some do not have anyone in their lives who cares about them, and they start to view you as a lifeline. Your whole life is scheduled around other people, many of whom cannot look at houses during the business day. You have to be a mind reader because people do not necessarily know how to describe what they want. You have to answer questions about taxes, financing, contracts, landscaping, home improvement, the buying and selling process, and more. Also, if the economy tanks, I hope you have a backup plan because you might not see a paycheck for 6 months. Not trying to make it sound miserable, the flip side is very emotionally rewarding. can be a lot of fun, and you can meet great people. Many people criticize real estate agents constantly without understanding what they actually do beyond emailing listings and opening doors. Story 96. I think working in general is important. People need to work hard to appreciate it, and they need to do it regularly to remind themselves. I take pride in treating everyone well and with respect. I started my first job at 14 and worked many jobs, including cleaning movie theaters, serving in restaurants, roofing, landscaping, retail, and more all through college. I earn a lot of money, but I treat people better than anyone I know, regardless of their background. Some believe that their social class determines their character, but the common reason why many are poor and do not treat others well is that they have not done the work. It does not matter the specifics. They simply have not worked hard, or they disliked it and blamed others instead of accepting that this is what it takes. I only have my own ambition to blame. Making excuses weakens the mind and character. Work hard and treat everyone as if they are working just as hard toward their own goals. This is not a handout. You are providing a service, and I appreciate it. Story 97. Preschool teaching. Ratio of 1 teacher per 12 children aged 2 to 5 years. We earn less money than kindergarten teachers. Story 98. Serving tables. People think it is easy, just carry plates and smile. But the chaos behind the smile, the fake patience, and the mental gymnastics of 10 tables demanding attention all at once. You do not understand until you are in it. Story 99. Cleaning dishes, and I mean only cleaning dishes, for 6 hours straight with no place to sit. Rarely you can make coffee, but only once per hour. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.